I'm Steph, that quirky bird girl. Hold up, I just heard a western osprey. Oh, it's a laughing kookaburra. A blue jay. And don't even get me started on the belted kingfisher.
Birds, aves, uccellis. That's birds in 3 different languages. The more you bird know.
Hit that follow and subscribe button for more bird fun. Watch my TV show one day.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to That Quirky Bird Girl. I am your host, Steph, and I am so excited to be welcoming you into their 3rd episode of this series of values and things that I have learned personally from birds in my own experience, and I'm sharing it all with you because I want you all to understand the amazing, beautiful, wonderful, lovely things, that was a blue jay, that we can hear, that was a blue jay again, oh my god, there it goes, that I have learned from birds and that they have quite literally changed my life from. So, we've talked about resilience, talked about joy, and now this week, we are going to be talking about self-kindness. That's a European starling. Self-kindness is a really big theme for me personally in my life right now. It's something that I've been working on really hard. And I literally just read a book last night that was saying or talking about how it could take years, decades to refine and to get right so that you have the perfect formula of feeling like yourself, feeling like you have self-actualized into your future or whatever it is that you're desiring in your life for yourself. Self-kindness is the key to get there. And we're going to talk about birds that help you do it. We're going to talk about what it is. And we're going to talk about a little bit of my life, okay? That has kind of guided me back to this self-kindness journey. So we'll get into it. Starting off strong, as you know, with all of these episodes, I like to get us a good definition in. So let's talk about self-kindness. All of our chapters are going to be listed here. And then throughout, I'll have the banners in the bottom right corner. So feel free to skip through to the section that you want to hear the most about or skip around. I don't know. My ADHD, it loves a little skipperoo. So feel free to do that if that works for yours. Now, what is self-kindness? Self-kindness is quite literally the practice of being warm, understanding, caring in lower moments that might be moments of failure, moments of big significant life change, moments where you don't necessarily feel like yourself, or maybe you've been feeling more down lately. Basically, moments where you're not necessarily meeting your own bare minimum. You're a little bit below that, even a lot of bit below that. Wherever you're at on that spectrum, you're below it. And the way that you talk to yourself when you are below that minimum is exactly where self-kindness can show up, either in the negative way or in the positive way. Ideally, by the end of this podcast, you're feeling more excited about expressing it in a positive way. I will tell you, when I first started learning about self-kindness and how to reflect it back inwards towards me, I didn't feel like it was something that was for me. I was honestly thinking that I talked to myself just fine, but when I actually slowed down and started thinking about the words that I would say to myself, one of my best friends said, "Would you say that to me?" And I was like, whoa, I would never say that to you. I would never say the things that I think to you. And that's a huge sign, y'all, that, hey, maybe we need to reflect and rethink a little bit the way that we're even talking to ourselves. That was an American Robin. It's not an easy practice. Like I said, that book said it takes decades. I personally don't think it needs to take decades. I think that if you're someone who might be a little bit more hard-headed in terms of getting into self-care and even just self-kindness in and of itself, then yeah, maybe it could take a little bit longer. But I think with our bird catalysts, it's much easier. What we tend to do in those lower moments are be critical of ourselves, is to tell ourselves that we're not doing a good job, or we're not doing enough, or we need to be doing more, or we need to be growing and expanding and learning and all of whatever it is that you are telling yourself that you need to be doing. It's never from a point of like, hey, maybe you should try this. It's never curiosity. If it's always something that has like a, you haven't done this, you didn't do this, it sounds like a voice that maybe you heard when you were a kid. That's your cue to listen in and to maybe find a different way that you can talk to yourself in. Because being critical towards yourself, towards anyone really, but we're talking about in the context of ourselves, it's the enemy of curiosity. And if you want to get to where you're headed, then being curious, continuing to be curious about how different opportunities, different people, different locations. I'm in Central Park right now. So even thinking about how the different trees behind me cascade or how they look different than the trees that we've seen in my past podcast episodes. Like if I was just sitting here like, oh, it's a really cloudy day, which it's not. But if it was a really cloudy day, then I would be saying it's a really cloudy day and there's just like nothing to appreciate. That's not actually true. There's still a lot to appreciate. And giving yourself that little window into what it is that you can appreciate allows us to let in some of that self-kindness. It's not easy. We're doing it together. There are a lot of things that self-kindness can help us with. And I'm going to get into what some of those things are. And here's our lovely next chapter. All right. So now you know what self-kindness is. Now we got to figure out what it actually helps you with. Sometimes we need to know what this new skill will actually do for us in the long run. It helps us keep an open mind. Like I said, I talked about curiosity just a few minutes ago. In order for you to remain curious, your mind almost has to be clear. You have to reach this meditative state where you're just kind of like, okay, this is what it's going to be. I can still appreciate this one thing. I am not a failure. I am not a XYZ, whatever you call yourself in those moments. So staying open is also something that kind of just happens as a product of being kind to yourself. Learning is another really important thing. So being able to say, okay, that didn't work or that wasn't what I was looking for, but what is? Again, being open and kind to yourself allows you the opportunity to continue asking these different types of questions. It also enables you to continue growing, hand in hand with learning, but a little bit different in that learning is often associated with what you can do for others, whereas growth is more internal, what you're doing for yourself, what you're giving yourself. Sometimes learning can be for yourself too, but that's not what I'm talking about here. It also allows you to know yourself a little bit better. So if you are able to have conversations with yourself where you're kind and where you're not internally shutting down, you're able to ask those questions and get a little bit more curious about who you truly are. And like I said, know yourself a little bit better, which only helps you put yourself in better positions later on when those opportunities or whatever it might be that you're working on does end up coming up. And lastly, one of the most important things outside of what we can do for ourselves, it's also what we do for and to others. So the way that we treat other people is a direct reflection of how we feel and how we actually treat ourselves. So if we are talking down to ourselves, if we are saying that we're not worthy, we're not this, we're not that, we're not the whatever you want to say that you are not, you can try and hide it with friends. You can try and hide it, but there are going to be moments where you say things that don't feel aligned with who you are or what it is that you're doing. And it's likely because those things that you said are connected with things that you said to yourself. So if you can heal the wound of I'm stupid or I'm this or I'm that, or, saying all of these horrible things to yourself that you would never say to anyone else, if you can remove all of that, you can stop the instances where it might come up when you're talking to other people. And that's when you can stop judging others. That's when you can be more in alignment with who you truly feel you are, making sure that also the people that are around you are experiencing you when you are at your best. You can't be at your best when you're talking down to yourself and when you're saying things that you wouldn't say to other people or you wouldn't even say out loud. Can you imagine, just follow me for a second, if you had those same thoughts that come to your mind when you're just like alone and maybe something happened, if you instead said, just say it out loud. Say it out loud and then see how it feels. Does it still feel aligned? Does it feel like that is something that you would say in the presence of other people? Because if you wouldn't say it in the presence of other people, you shouldn't be saying it anyways. So maybe that's a good cue for you to say, okay, hold on, pause. I need to be a little bit kinder to myself in this moment. It's literally my first time living this life. It's my first time doing these things that I've literally never done before. You're allowed to make mistakes and you're allowed to grow and you're allowed to learn from them. And it's not easy to be doing all of those things. Don't get me wrong, but it's vital to be doing those things. Because honestly, it can lead to a mental health crash. In my own life, and I'll get into my story of self-kindness in just a second, but I, in my own life, had so many instances where I was talking down to myself, and then I would hear those same things being reflected back to me, whether it be in the workplace or at home. If I didn't feel good within myself, then how could the people around me feel good about what it was that I was doing? That insecurity showed up. And then the very thing that I was afraid of, being seen as XYZ, whatever it was in that case, ended up happening. And it wasn't because I was the thing that I was thinking I was. It wasn't because I was incompetent. It wasn't because I was stupid. It wasn't all of these things, words that I was worried about. It was because I didn't trust myself. And because I didn't trust myself, other people then reflected that. And that's why it's so important to remind yourself of who you are, what you're doing, and continue to do that in the way that you are actually talking to yourself, because it does get better every single day. If you continue to work on these things, you become more able to have kind conversations with yourself over time. But you're not going to start day one and immediately be like, well, I love you. That's just not how it works. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of repeating the same phrases over and over again. But once you start believing them, that's when things really start changing. So let's get into some of my self-kindness story. Now, I have been horribly mean to myself for a long, long, long time. And I think a lot of people in my life really resonate with that as well. I look around, or I have conversations with people, and we'll talk about self-kindness, and it's almost like a foreign concept. It's not something that we were raised with thinking about. We have that saying, it's like, don't do unto others as you wouldn't do unto yourself, or something along those lines. But it's basically saying, like, whatever you outwardly put, don't put, no. Whatever you wouldn't put inwardly, don't put outwardly. But what about the reverse? What about the reverse, where we're actually being mean to ourselves internally and being terribly kind externally? That's the case for a lot of people that I know, and a lot of areas that we struggle in. I can be the kindest person when I am around other people. And when I'm alone, I will say things to myself that I would never say to those individuals. And I think that's why it's so important to be working on this as well. I think the moment where I realized this the most, that I really needed to start working on my own version of self-kindness, was when I was struggling to walk. So after COVID, I ended up getting and experiencing long COVID, and then that made all of these other autoimmune conditions that I had, and a heart condition that I have, almost unbearable, to the point where I was walking on crutches. My doctor had just ordered a wheelchair. I was using a cane every day. It hurt to just even move. It just hurt. I was in pain all of the time. I was angry with my body because I thought that it was literally betraying me. I thought that it was everything that I wanted. I could see it like slipping out of my hands, and I was so upset and mad. And I was mad at myself for letting my condition get this bad. I was mad that I couldn't do anything about it. And, to a certain degree, there were things that I could have done about it, but I was so mad that I couldn't even see those things. I couldn't even recognize what they were, because I was stuck. I felt stuck. I also felt embarrassed. I felt embarrassed to talk about the state of my mental health, my physical health, really across the board. I felt like I was supposed to be in control of something that was completely out of my control. And it just felt wrong. It really wasn't until I moved to New York where I realized that I was capable of so much more than I even thought. And so all of these things that I had told myself for years, that like I wasn't capable, I wasn't able to walk, I would never walk again, I would never move again, I would never be the person that I wanted to be, my dreams were ending at the young age of 28 years old. New York like woke me up. It made me see who I truly was, who I truly am, and allowed me to really self-actualize in a way that like I couldn't have done when I was living in Chicago using my crutches. I allowed myself, when I first moved here, to believe that I was capable of more than what I saw I was capable in that moment. So I almost got these glimpses of what it would look like if I were kind to myself in certain instances. And for the most part, like I was not terribly kind to myself for a really, really long time. And it took a while for me to be like, okay, actually I can be like a little bit nicer to myself. I can be a little bit, XYZ, whatever it is. And I started practicing some of it, but it was still really, really hard for me. I was having trouble even saying like affirmations. I was seeing a nutritionist when I first moved to New York, and she was helping me kind of figure out how I wanted to talk to myself about food. And I remember having a moment where I was like, I can't do affirmations. They don't feel real. They don't feel like I'm actually telling the truth about myself. I feel like I'm like lying. And I don't know, it was a strange feeling. And the reason why I was so blocked in that moment with affirmations that she was trying to help me out with was because I couldn't believe that I deserved kindness without doing something to earn it. I'd also grown up in a household where every single positive emotion, every single good thing that came in my life, I had to do something to earn it. Nothing was ever like handed to me. My parents, both of them had crazy schedules, and outside of that, if I wanted something, then I needed to, one, show them that I want it by doing something, whether that be with like yard work, going outside, going door to door, like whatever it was. There had to be some sort of like earning it component. And without that, it almost didn't even feel like I would be capable of doing it. So when affirmations were added to my life, I suppose, I just told myself this isn't something that I deserve because I haven't done anything to earn it. Like, I literally told myself, you have done nothing in your life. You've been so lazy and you've been so incapable and unable. And so you don't even deserve being spoken kind to, because that's just not something that you deserve. And I think taking that away from myself and telling myself I almost like put myself in timeout. If I was my baseline, if I was at my baseline and not like doing anything, which is what I would tell myself, then I would punish myself. I would say, you're not doing anything. You're not moving forward in your life. You're not making changes. You're not being like swift with this, that, or the other thing. And so I just said, you don't deserve it. Until you do something that makes me feel proud, then you don't get that good thing. And you don't get that affirmation. You don't get that story. Whatever it is that I needed or wanted in that moment, I would hold it back for myself. And oh my gosh, if I did something that I felt like was misaligned or didn't feel like me, infinitely worse. Infinitely worse. I was like, okay, you don't deserve anything. You don't deserve kindness. I would speak to myself so poorly. I would say, you deserve everything that happens to you next. And it wasn't a good place to be when you're trying to grow and learn and adapt, because every time I would talk to myself that way, I had to almost like carve myself up out of the hole that I dug myself into and then be like, you are worthy. But then by the time it would get around, it would be like a day later, and I just wouldn't believe it. Because I'm sorry, if you're sitting there and spending 24 hours telling yourself you're the worst person on the planet, and then when you wake up and you're like, hey, you're not a horrible person, 24 hours later, how are you to believe the person that is on the other side of that that's saying that you're not that bad and that you need to read all of these affirmations and they'll somehow make you feel better? That just didn't click for me. And I struggled. But what I've realized is that self-kindness has to be something that is intentional. It has to be at the door. Immediately when the thought pops up, you have to say it out loud and then negate it. Or you don't say it at all. When you get so good at telling what is a good thought and what is a bad thought, then you won't even have to say it out loud at all. It'll just be natural and you can just be like, nope, don't say that. That's bad. You can only get like one word out or something, and then cut yourself off immediately. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time. I mean, it's been 2 years of me practicing this, and I'm finally at the place where like I'm like cutting myself at the gate. I'm like, nope, can't say that. Only 2 words in. Gotcha. And the rest of the words are kind of shut off. But when I first started, it was like I would say a mean thing to myself, and then I would notice again 24 hours later, I would say another mean thing to myself, and I would notice 20 minutes later, and then I would react and say something opposite or try to retroactively pull away the comment. But it's not easy to focus on self-kindness. It requires a lot of regulation of your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is basically like the thought wheel that just keeps on going and going and going and producing new thoughts. And sometimes they come too fast. I used to say that all the time, that my thoughts are coming at me. Like, I don't know when to slow them down. I don't know how to slow them down. It was really, really hard to do. And so I almost had to like go through this process of like shutting my brain off when something happened and just be like, nope, you can't even, you're not allowed to think. You're kind of in thought timeout a little bit. And if I decide your thoughts are positive enough, then I'll let them through. And so for a while, I was just like going through that. I mean, it had to have been at least like a year, but it was just, it's a really hard process. But I will tell you now, 2 years in, and I'm finally in a place where I feel like I'm getting the positive thoughts first. It has been so worthwhile, and it has taken a lot to get here, a lot of birds that have helped me along the way. So I'm going to get into that right now. So let's chat about some birds. So I'm going to give an analogy to kick us off with this bird section, because I'm here in Central Park and I'm looking at some pretty awesome birds. I've got American robins to my right, European starlings to my left, dark-eyed juncos in front of me, and a blue jay that's kind of hollowing out this hole over here because I think they're going to use it for a nest. But they are just soaring and glorifying. I don't know. They're beautiful, and they're all here in Central Park, just strolling. It's a beautiful day. It's 84 degrees out, and I have a bird walk coming up soon. Yee! I'm very much looking forward to it, but often the birds that we see when we're on my bird walk are a little bit different, and one of them is called a red-tailed hawk. Now, if you've never seen a red-tailed hawk, they're quite large. Their tail is 9 times out of 10 fanned out as they're soaring high up in the sky. And they love to kind of terrorize blue jay communities, which makes sense. I mean, blue jays have kind of retaliated in their own way by remembering the call of the red-tailed hawk and then mimicking it, which is kind of crazy, but so cool that they've been able to do that. Anyways, the way that the red-tailed hawk kind of just like keeps coming back, and they will soar the sky looking for a blue jay, and each time blue jays have had this like amazing adaptation where they have been able to reproduce the call and get the red-tailed hawk out of the area by dive bombing or just scaring them away, a bunch of different ways. But in a lot of ways, the mindset that we need to have when we are thinking about self-kindness and when we are exploring this for the very first time is that we have to be the blue jay. We have to be the one that's constantly coming back and being like, nope, nope, nope. It's kind of like how you're learning, or when you're learning to first set boundaries and you're like, no, no, no. Like, you have to continue to set them and set them and set them and set them, because there are going to be people who either push back. There are going to be new people that come in your life. There are going to be new things, new experiences that change and alter your boundaries. So you have to adjust them again, and you have to reiterate them, and you have to communicate. And it can be really, really hard. But if you remember that blue jays are just constantly doing this thing where they're pushing the red-tailed hawks out of their community, it kind of feels a little easier if you just remember it as something that's more mechanical, rather something that like could take energy from you. And if it takes a lot of energy from you to do things like set boundaries or to be kind to yourself, then I would maybe reevaluate that too, because it shouldn't be taking so much energy that you're feeling drained every day that you're doing it. If it is, there's probably someone or something that's making that a little bit more difficult, whether that be you or another person. And I think that would be worth to evaluate a little bit. Be happy, let me know what's going on in the comments and we can chat about it. But that is a bird that has really helped me kind of keep my resilience up and keep me going. I talked about them in the resilience video. If you haven't seen that one, go check it out. But again, sometimes it does all come back to resilience and pushing ourselves and knowing that everything is going to be okay as we keep trying this and keep growing and keep pushing ourselves kind of in front of the wheel, I suppose you could say, and continuing to try. But you've got it in you, my friend, and if you don't, The birds are going to show you how, so don't you dare worry. So the next bird we have is our lovely, lovely great blue heron. I love, 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 love great blue herons. I think they're absolutely stunning. They have this behavior where they'll basically stalk over water. So they'll just stand at the edge of the bank or at the edge of the river or a lake or whatever it might be, and they're just looking. And oftentimes they'll do the same behavior for hours. They will be there for a long, long, long time. And so sometimes when I look to them, I think, I wonder what it would be like if I just kind of had that sort of curiosity that they have for water and looking for their food as I do about my brain. Like, what if I just sat there and analyzed everything that kind of came through and the automatic thoughts and the things that maybe I don't even want to sit in? Like, what does it look like if I were to do that? And I think oftentimes great blue herons give me the strength that I need to be able to do that, because it's not easy to sit in your automatic thoughts. It can be really, really hard and really, really uncomfortable. And so practicing and kind of using the patience and the strength of a great blue heron will help you continue to ask yourself and get curious about the different ways that your brain is processing information. They also kind of remind you of the whole process. You know, I talked about how self-kindness can take decades. My hope is that it doesn't. But great blue herons can really help us wait and see what's going to happen and allow us to really like just enjoy the process or the journey or whatever it might be that you're kind of going through up and down, to understand, you know, what it is that I'm sorry, I just saw someone standing on top of a bicycle. Like, it was his bicycle, and he was standing on top of it. His foot was on the seat, and his other foot was on the handlebars. I've never seen that before. That was awesome. So yes, great blue herons help us find a way to get back to ourselves and do that with a little bit more patience and awareness and curiosity. And maybe even excitement if you can find that, you know. They aren't just standing there staring at the water. When they do get a nugget, they leap for it. So if you have a bad thought that you're like, hey, this isn't suiting me, this isn't good for the next thing that I want to do or the next layer of my life, then attack it. Jump into it. Use that beak that the great blue heron has. Poke it at the ground and make sure that it fears you, that it never, never, never dares to come across you ever again. That's kind of what this is all about. So, great blue heron. Up next, we have a ruby-throated hummingbird. And these birds are absolutely beautiful. They are migratory, which means they are strong. They know how to travel north to south, north to south, north to south. And they figured out how to do it in a way that's pretty unique. So I recently had a podcast episode that dropped with a author. Her name is Susie, and she's absolutely wonderful. I'll put her information down in the bio here as well. But she shared with me that ruby-throated hummingbirds will actually follow yellow-bellied sapsuckers along their migratory route, making their way up north. And they will make use of the little sap holes that they create, and they'll actually get quite defensive over them. So if you've heard of different feeders or watched different hummingbird behavior, you know that they will swarm around there. They'll dive in. They will sort of beak. I don't know if there's a word for that, but they will beak at other birds and make sure that they don't want to get too close. So there's a lot of behavior wrapped up in all of that. But ruby-throated hummingbirds make their experience and their journey a lot easier just by relying on the other people around them. So self-kindness is not something that is easy. And so if you ever need notes or if you need something to rely on the way that other people see you. And maybe it's a good opportunity for you to ask six people in your life how they see you. Write it down, take notes, and allow those to be a little bit of your guide. You know, ask your best friend, people who think highly of you, people who love you or care about you. Get some data on what it looks like for them to be in your life, what you bring in their opinion, not necessarily filtered through yours, that makes them want to continue having you in their life. And use that as a guide to help you be more kind to yourself. Because the first time I did this, I asked my best friend the way that she saw me, and she said that I am so terribly kind and I'm open and I'm honest. And those are things that I've always really appreciated about myself, but I didn't really know if anyone else ever really saw them or experienced them from me because I just never asked. I didn't have the courage to ask. It takes a lot of courage to ask people how they see you. And so when I finally did ask her, I was kind of shocked that that was what she said. And I used that information and that data to be like, okay, maybe I actually can really act like these are things that matter to me, because they do matter to me. They are things that I care about myself, but I just didn't realize that I could be boldly saying that I cared about them. Like, if I'm kind outwardly, I can also be kind inwardly. If I'm caring outwardly, then I can also be caring inwardly. So all of these traits and these ways that I would talk to my friends, I started paying more attention to the words that I would use, and then made sure that whatever it was that I was saying to the people that I love, I was also saying to myself. Because at the end of the day, like, all we want to do is to love ourselves too, and that's a really hard journey, especially if you grew up in a household where that wasn't something that was prioritized or even talked about or even cared about. But you can make that difference now. You can make that change now. Your childhood and the way that you grew up does not have to be the way that you continue to live your life. And I think that's why a lot of us as adults, they say hurt people, and all of these like sayings to kind of normalize that pain done to others is okay. But I'm sorry, it's not. It's not. Whatever you talk to yourself about inwardly, you're doing outwardly. And we have to recognize that we have power in the fact that we can change that. But if you just settle in the fact that, well, I was raised this way and I can't do any better, well, then you can't do any better. Sure, you can though. You can though. It's that you don't want to, because it's hard. It's hard. I just said that it takes like decades to learn how to be kinder to yourself. It's really hard, but it's really worth it. And I think you should do it. Our next bird is the house sparrow, and specifically something that we're seeing right this time of year. It's nest building. So it is spring here in New York City, and as you can tell, it is beautiful all around me. But house sparrows are getting ready to make their nest. And if you don't know anything about house sparrows' nests, they actually raise about 3 clutches a season in their nest, which means that they will have 3 different sets of eggs. Now, that means that for house sparrows, they're going to have 3 different sets of learnings that they can do each season or experience each season in order to improve their parenting, to improve their nest, to improve whatever it is that they're protecting their young, whatever it is that they're trying to do, they're able to improve it. Now, I was sitting here and I was seeing a house sparrow come down here, grab some twigs, and then fly up. And then it got me thinking, think about all those small twigs that they're putting in the nest. The first round is not going to be perfect. It's not even going to be close to perfect. But the house sparrow knows that. They know they're going to continue grabbing, and they're going to be fine with the little pieces that they get because they have 2 other opportunities to continue improving their nest and raising their young. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. And we have to start becoming okay with that so that we can then become okay with learning and growing and adapting and being kind to ourselves along the way. Because if the house sparrow was instead like, well, it's going to be really hard for me to make the perfect nest, so I just won't try this season and I'll just raise my eggs sitting on top of this bush. How does that sound? Are you kidding me? A blue jay is going to eat those eggs in a second. They won't even be eggs anymore. Scrambled in the belly of a blue jay, okay? So house sparrows allow themselves the grace. They're kind enough to themselves to know, all right, I get a few shots at this. I'm going to go a few times. I'm going to get some twigs, get some more twigs, get some more twigs. My nest will be okay enough for the first clutch. The second clutch, it'll get better. And by the third one, well, the season's over, but also it'll probably be the best that it's ever been. Allow yourself to continue growing, to continue adapting, to continue changing, and be kind to yourself in the process, because each new version of you is just a version better aligned with who you are and who you want to be. But if you stop yourself by saying, I can't do the versions because, you know what? It's just never going to be what I want it to be, then heck, yeah, you're right. It's never going to be what you want it to be. It's never going to be even close to what you want it to be. It's probably going to be anti what you want it to be because it'll never even be born, because you won't get started, because you're too scared of what an early product would look like. But you have to become okay with the fact that early products are not the best. Early nests, not the best. But you're going to grow and you're going to learn and you're going to adapt. So you have to figure out how to use the language or how to find the language so that you can tell yourself, hey, it's okay to learn, it's okay to grow, it's okay to adapt while you're doing it. So you ride the waves, baby. And lastly, of the birds, this is less a specific bird and more a generic bird. So any mating bird, in this case, we'll talk about the common grackle. Excellent parents live in massive, massive communities, so they will raise more communally than other birds. For example, the American robin. Oh, there was a blue jay just mimicking a red-tailed hawk. But coming back to all of the other mating birds, they're often doing like a silly little mating dance, right? So we get to see them kind of flail around. The males make all of these like strange movements that we've never seen before, and I don't know that a female bird has ever seen before either. They're getting to moving, okay? And there are times where in this getting to moving, they are not moving it right or doing it well, and the female will just fly away because it's not her cup of tea, okay? That male just is like, okay, next, and he turns around and he starts doing the dance for another female. That's kind of how life has to be. Sometimes we have to be able to be kind enough to ourselves to know, like, okay, it wasn't me, it was them. Next, because sometimes that is what it is. We never know what other people are looking for, what they want in their lives, whether it be friendships, relationships, even parents. Even parents, we don't know what their vision for kids or for their partner or for their friend is. So we have to remain open in thinking that it wasn't us sometimes that caused it, and that is just to get us over the hump of feeling sorry for ourselves, because oftentimes when something deteriorates or it doesn't end up working out, what we do is we sit there and we tell ourselves we're not good enough and we're not this and we're not that and da 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 da, all of these things. We're so mean to ourselves, but we have to get out of that, because that is just like self-victimizing and making ourselves feel bad about who we are or who we were or whatever it was. You don't deserve that. If you did do something wrong in the dynamic or you made a mistake, you're allowed to make a mistake and you're allowed to grow from it. You're allowed to say, hey, I don't think I'm ever going to do that again. Or I'm going to take steps to make sure that I will never do that again. But I'm not a bad person. I'm not like fundamentally horrible. Because that's what our brains tell us sometimes. That's what we tell ourselves when we're like, you're so bad, you're so this, you're so that. It can be difficult. And so reminding ourselves of the opposite can be really, really helpful, and keeping our heads above the ground. So if you recently had some big life change, if you lost a job, if anything, please, please, please remember that you need to carry a little bit of the energy of a mating bird, because you too can bounce back, my friend. You can be kind to yourself along the way too. All right, everyone, this was our episode all about self-kindness. I have had so much fun creating these episodes for you all and getting a little bit of joy in between, obviously with our wonderful birds. We have 3 males that are fighting, 4 males, American robins that are fighting. It is territorial season, y'all, so they do not like other birds being in their space and foraging where they're foraging. They're trying to get that worm, you know what I'm saying? So I will see y'all on the next episode. Thank you so much for watching this one. Thank you for tuning in. Share it with a friend, share it with your mom, share it with the people you love. I love you, and I will see you on the other side. Bye!